At the end of the service, we will sing a Bach chorale, the tune of which began during the 30 Years' War, a time when religion and nationalism had gone crazy, and over half the population in some swaths of Germany had been decimated by pestilence and killing. About 100 years ago, a Quaker minister wrote the words to that hymn that we will sing, and that will be my prayer for illumination this morning. I'll sing it since this tune is unfamiliar to us, I think, and maybe it'll seep in by the closing hymn. Please pray with me. Thou art thyself the truth, though we who fain would find thee have tried with thoughts uncouth, in feeble words to bind thee. It is because thou art driven to the test, till truth from falsehood part, our souls can find no rest. May the words of my mouth and may the meditations of every heart glorify you, for you are our truth, our rock, and our Redeemer. Amen. I love the word uncouth. We don't use that enough these days, and we should. So imagine someone walks up to you while you're busy at work, at the office, riding BART, maybe at the grocery store, and this absolute stranger says, "Follow me, and I will make you fish for people." No good morning, no how do you do, no references, no background check. Just someone, some dude, looking for students. That's what Andrew and Simon say yes to. And it turns out that's all the credentials Jesus requires of disciples. It's that simple. Just say yes and follow him. But by saying yes to Jesus, won't their fishing contracts with the empire be voided? Won't James and John's father Zebedee see his boys, who are his livelihood, walk away? There goes his workforce and his retirement plan. How could they say yes that easily and then sashay away with Jesus, away from the stability, away from everything that's normal? What kind of respectable person just walks away from everything that is expected of them? There must have been something in the way he said it. Follow me. There must have been something authentic in the way his body communicated something sure and secure. It is through encountering the absolute safety of God that we discover our true self. And in finding our truest self, we find a God who is always and forever larger than we expected. The truth of our identity, wrapped in God, gives us a deep sense of radical okayness. I am okay after all. But it also gives us a sense of humility, that we are absolutely dependent on God. What a paradox. Those are the words of Father Richard Rohr. He continues, "You are not your gender. You are not your nationality. You are not your talents, nor your money, nor your time. You're not your ethnicity, nor your skin color. You are not even your social class. These are not the qualities of the true self." Why, oh why, he asked, why do Christians allow temporary costumes to pass for the true self. Thomas Merton said, "If I find my true self, I will also find God. And if I find God, there I will find my true self." This discovery holds the keys of unity with God and with one another. Colossians 3, "For you died, and your life is now hidden away with Christ in God." We, like Andrew, Simon Peter, and those Zebedee boys, we say yes to following Jesus, and the false self begins to fall away. And the true self awakens to absolute well-being and freedom and the joy of humble dependence on God. Now I can hear some of you thinking, what? To find the inner quiet fortress of the true self. Many begin with a spiritual practice, and it always begins with noticing the breath. That's what our 9:15 prayer group does in the lounge. Breathe in your true self. Breathe out your false self. That's a start. Now, the false self is like an extra on The Walking Dead. I love watching The Walking Dead. Do not judge me. It's a TV show. It's about humans who must kill zombies. And it takes constant attention to make sure those zombies stay dead. The false self is a zombie, a master of fear and distraction, with a siren song that lulls us into insecurity and ultimate inhumane values. My theory goes like this. The impulse of the false self originates in the basal ganglia of the brain. Stick with me. The basal ganglia evolved while we were still yet lizards, and whose survival depended on the practice of fight or flight or freeze. In other words, fear and insecurity, that's what fuels the false self. It's our job, pseudoscientifically speaking, to interrupt the flow of communication between the false self lizard brain and the true self up in the cerebrum. You can do it if you can stop long enough. I can't stop long enough much of the time. If somebody attacks my dog, I'm after them. If somebody won't let loose it down on Muni, my lizard brain takes over. The church in Corinth had once answered the call to discipleship, much like the disciples in our reading today. They said an easy yes. Yes, let's form a church. But being human, after a while, after their founding pastor left, they eventually had to feed the false self because it won't stay gone. The false self gains momentum exponentially in crowds. Hear this excerpt from Paul's letter to the early Corinthian Jesus movement as their former pastor and their founder. A reading from 1 Corinthians. Now I appeal to you, brothers and sisters, by the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that all of you be in agreement and that there be no divisions among you, but that you be united in the same mind and the same purpose. For it has been reported to me by Chloe's people that there are quarrels among you, my brothers and sisters, and what I mean is that each of you says, I belong to Paul, or I belong to Apollos, or I belong to Cephas, or I belong to Christ. Has Christ been divided? Was I, Paul, crucified for you? Or were you baptized in the name of Paul? I thank God that I baptized none of you, well, except Crispus and Gaius, so that no one can say that you were baptized in my name. I did baptize also the household of Stephanas. Beyond that, I don't know whether I baptized anyone else. For Christ did not send me to baptize, but to proclaim the gospel, and not with eloquent wisdom, so that the cross of Christ might not be empty of its power. For the message about the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved is the power of God. Friends, this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God, okay? That's your part. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Good. All right. We may move on. I never caught a lot of that until this week. I love how human Paul is. He says, I'm glad I didn't baptize any of you. Well, that one couple, and then there was a whole household. But anyway, I don't remember. And God didn't mean for me to baptize. I'm called to share the message of Jesus. God did not call Paul to administer sacraments nor to audition the perfect praise band, but to bring to fruition the ministry of Jesus Christ, to usher in the kingdom on earth, to preach the love of God that depends on the love of neighbor as we love ourselves. Some of us are called to do that. All of us are called to follow Jesus. The choir just sang of a beautiful, scripturally based truth. They said, for when 2 or 3 are met together, thou art in the midst of them. That was gorgeous. I have heard that anthem my whole life. That's not easy. It was beautifully done. And that is the truth. When 2 or more are gathered, God is in our midst. But theologian and pastor Ruth Lemmel adds, when 2 or more are gathered, factions also lurk in the midst of them. I like to say, where 2 or more are gathered, there will be drama. We're people. Back when Paul was full of vision and energy for his emergent church, and they were all younger, and they all knew the true self feeling, they were fully alive. But now, because they are human, the false self is demanding a full-course dinner in the social hall with candles and tablecloths. It demands its fair share of your attention. And what followed was a good church fight over worship style. Overthinking, anxiety, security, cynicism, all of them creep in, invited by the false self. That's not a judgment. That's just a state of being human. Well, you know, I liked Apollos better. And the way his wife dressed, she was great. I belong to Apollos. I don't like that new pastor. I belong to Paul. But we can tell in his letter, Paul's moved on. He wants them to move on too, into a deeper relationship with the God that made them, and a deeper sense of the call to transform the hurting world around them. He wants them to unify, not around a personality, but around Christ in their lives, to love neighbors, to bind up the brokenhearted, to listen to the voices of those long silenced, even in the church. Now let's pan out a bit. Let's widen the shot, fisheye lens. How might these group dynamics be observed today? That's pretty easy. In our context currently. Well, we've all heard this. I didn't vote for that creature, and you can't make me say his name. Not my president, not my president, not my president. My president is Jimmy Carter. I belong to Jimmy. I get it. We have never before been here as a nation. A post-truth world. That was the word of the year 3 years ago. Okay? We have lived in this world for a while, where our leaders mislead to benefit themselves, and we belong to something bigger, and we have forgotten. Do not surrender to the false self. The false self is the perfect liar. The church began with uncredentialed fishermen. Likewise, this nation once welcomed tired, poor, huddled masses. Jesus was a, oh no, you first kind of guy. Love God, your neighbor, yourselves, your true selves. And we are slipping into not America first, but me first. Me first. The Corinthian culture war drove Paul to his wits' end. There were even Corinthians who denied, in the year 51, they denied the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Chloe's people reported chaos during worship, with free-form worshipers at odds with well-heeled worshipers trying to concentrate. A woman testifies, Paul reports, which was controversial in itself, and to make matters worse, her clothing falls open like Janet Jackson at a Super Bowl. People were outraged. Call Paul back, he can fix this. Church has never been, nor never will be, a completely safe harbor. Yes, we are a sanctuary. Yes, we try. But we are people. The true church is comprised of diversity, differences, and loving dialogue. It is possible. I have been changed by the differences of opinion you have with me. I have been transformed. And even in this day and age, when the truth is endangered, we can still peel away the veneer of the false self. And this is where we find unity. The true light that is coming into the world shines on everyone. The true self does not claim God is on our side. The true self asks, are we on God's side? The false self waits in the corner, waits for your soul, saying, really, you're going to fish for people? Really? That's kind of creepy. And we are soothed by this call to inaction. It requires so little Netflix. Yeah, that's creepy. I'll just wait. And while we wait, our anxiety rises. And that seems right because everybody else is anxious and don't you want to fit in? And then we worry about time, and we worry about our money, and we worry about not using our talents enough and not making commitments. Addressing that very condition, my friend, the Reverend Daniel Ross Jones writes, the world does not need an anxious church. The world needs a church that cultivates hope and transforms lives. That sounds almost identical to our mission statement, except for the anxiety part. Watch the news. People know how to unify around fear. They know how to unify around loss, and the fear of loss, and scarcity, and the fear of scarcity, but we are people of faith. We unify when we confess the true self, hidden safely with Christ in God, wrapped up in a blanket of love, safe with God. So we can cast our nets in a new direction and rely on God. Hearing Allison's children's moment, I thought maybe the nets are a symbol for like being caught up in the false self, and they drop that, and then they go and follow Jesus. Christ has gift-wrapped your soul, your true self, and he waits for you to open it. All that is required is yes. In the name of the one who is the way, the truth, and the life. Amen.